The Bible has a lot of different words for sin, generically. Idolatry, transgression, sin, corruption, and so forth. And all of them overlap to some extent, but they have certain kinds of flavor. Sin is probably the most generic one, and has to do with missing the mark, but it's God's mark. So it means that if we break his law, we're sinning, but then the fact that we're breaking the law is transgressing a particular law. And if we're missing the mark by not doing what we ought to be doing, then in some ways we're de-godding God. We're raising something else to be God, and thus we have fallen into idolatry. Sin is the generic category for all kinds of evil. Law breaking is actually transgressing specific commands, doing what he forbids or failing to do what he commands. Idolatry is in some ways the most basic of all of them, because it is decentering God. It's removing him off to the side. Either I become my own God or I choose something else as my God. It's not for nothing that the first commandment in importance, according to the Lord Jesus, is, you shall love God with heart and soul and mind and strength. That's the way we were created. That's the way it's supposed to be. The first responsibility of sentient moral beings is to acknowledge their Creator with adoration and thanksgiving. If instead then we fail to love God with heart and soul and mind and strength, we have already fallen into idolatry. We have fallen into sin. We have missed the mark of what we should be, and we have de-godded God. And this most horrific offense is really a kind of declaration of independence from God. But whereas a declaration of independence from a totalitarian evil regime might be a good thing, freedom from God is not a good thing. It's already a mark of horrific rebellion, because God is God. He made us. He holds us to account. He's our creator, but he is also our final judge. He establishes what's right and wrong, what's good and evil by his own character and being. So that so-called freedom from him actually becomes enslavement to sin. And thus it is intrinsically idolatry, because we are raising up some other standard, some other God, some other being to be the very center of all that we choose, everything that we cherish, all that we want the most. That's also why the Apostle Paul can say that covetousness is idolatry. Because if you want something badly enough, that becomes God for you. It's why an atheist can be an idolater. Claiming there is no God becomes a certain kind of ideology in which you have instituted something else, naturalism, your own desires, your own inherited culture or whatever, to be your supreme good. And that becomes God for you. It has displaced the God who is there, to use the language of Francis Schaeffer, and thus becomes a form of idolatry. Sin is an embracing category that touches all of these ways of looking at evil.